بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. So, we are starting this Mubarak book, inshallah ta'ala, may Allah give us tawfiq. This is the Muntaqa min Sunan al-Musnada. So, various different terms here. Muntaqa, it's not a term, right? But it means a selection. So here's this giant scholar, okay, who has access to a ridiculous amount of information, and he is summarizing something for you in a bite-sized piece, which is very important. That's why we discussed last week why we do this book. So look at it. It's about 1,000 hadith. You can actually study it, right? You can actually finish it as opposed to something really long. So number one is Muntaqa. It's from min sunan. Sunan meaning hadith to do with halal and haram. He's not trying to say, hey, let's do a sunnah of using siwak. He's not talking about that, right? What he's trying to say is sunan meaning halal and haram. When we say a sunnah, kitab al-sunnah, that means to do with orthodox belief. Kitab al-sunnah by Ibn Abi Asim, points of a Sunni belief, right? Or etc. Sunnah, right? He is Sunni, right? That's something else. Musnada, meaning two things, either marfu'a, words of the Prophet ﷺ, or meaning musnada with it's muttasila, they're connected. Musnad can mean both, right? So this is a selection of hadiths to do with halal haram with a chain transmission, collected by our author Ibn al-Jarud. Okay, so Ibn al-Jarud, he's in the 3rd century, so he dies in the beginning of the 4th century. So what does that mean then? That means between him and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 people. Okay, he's living in a time when Hanafi fiqh is already 200 years old, right? Or also Hanafi fiqh is well established. The madhahib are widespread, right? Albeit not 100%. So he's like somebody so in his time, the intisab to each madhab is not super clear, but he's nebulously working in a Hanbali / Shafi'i kind of way, right? Nebulously, it's not very clear. Right? In another generation or so, you will find that basically every single person will then follow madhab, right? That you'll say so and so ash-Shafi'i, so and so this, so and so that. So what happens is they're kind of still part of proto madhabs. So the Shafi'i madhab, yes, it exists, of course. It's already being expanded upon, but the intisab, the fact that someone's going to work specifically in that system, is going to be loose, right? It's going to be loose. Okay, just give me 1 second, please. Okay, Bismillah. So the madhahib are established, that's A. So fiqh, he's going to be giving titles. Those titles are based on he's going to put titles. Those titles are based on the fiqh of the fuqaha. Like there's already an understanding. It's not just his understanding of the hadith. It's like there's already an idea that the fuqaha are talking about. So I'm going to put this hadith under that chapter. Okay. And as we've spoken about in other classes, fiqh precedes hadith, right? Meaning the analysis of halal and haram in the Quran and Sunnah precede the analysis of the Quran and Sunnah. Okay? Because that's one of the most important things. Okay. So that's important to understand. The development of the madhahib and fiqh and the concepts and how we look at fiqh is already there. It's already in their mind. So he's not inventing that at all. What else about the time? He's in the beginning of the fourth century, third century, fourth century. So what does it mean? We said that the default is he will have no hadiths that no one else will have. In fact, his hadiths will be the same as Abu Dawood, same as Tirmidhi, same as Bukhari, same as everybody else, right? So we mentioned in the Muqidha, and those of you who like it have access, we can give you access to the recordings of the Muqidha. Imam al-Dhahabi says, people in that time, in the year 250, 300, they don't have hadith that nobody else has, right? So by the time about 150, 200, all hadiths have spread everywhere. So you will be traveling around from city to city to city. You might hear a different version of the same hadith. You might see this, and you might be trying to find errors because you're trying to compare all the different versions of this hadith in the different cities and seeing who made the mistake, which generation made the mistake, etc. But you're not really hearing new information. So Imam al-Dhahabi says you have this scholar of this time, someone like Ibn Jarud, he will have 1,000,000 hadiths that he narrates, and like two of them are unique. Right? Two of them are unique. So what he's doing is he's taking, and in fact, if they are unique, that's a problem, right? So if at the time of Ibn Jarud he's traveling around from Naysapur to Balkh to Fustat to Mecca to Medina to Misisa to wherever you are, and he finds somebody who has a hadith that he's never heard, he'll be like, that's awfully odd. That is a hadith that's a gharib. Because if you're the only person to narrate this hadith, that's problematic, but in that period of time. Because that means your teachers are in the third century, and by the third century, by the year 200, 250, hadiths have spread. So if you have a hadith that nobody else has, it's problematic. Okay? So what it means is we're not going to see hadiths here that no one else has, generally speaking. Right? Generally speaking. It might be somewhere else. It might not be, maybe it's in Ibn Khuzaymah. Maybe it's in Ibn Hibban. Maybe it's in some other book, but it's not found anywhere else. That's very, very rare. And if it is, that's kind of suspicious. Right? Does that make sense? Okay, so that's the basic picture there. We spoke about those different points. And the tahqiq of the book. He's also not going to give us criticism of the hadith, but generally speaking, as Imam al-Dhahabi mentions, the hadiths are all basically Hasan or Sahih. There aren't really any weak hadiths here. Allahu A'lam. Then he's going to talk about the manuscript. So again, how does this book reach us? So there is Ibn Jarud himself. He has a chain transmission. Number one, I can check other versions of this self-same hadith. So the hadith is probably going to be narrated, it's probably going to be tafarrud. You'll probably split maybe at his grand teacher or great grand teacher's level. So he's not really going to narrate other hadiths that aren't found. So I can check with other places that these hadith exist. Number two, then there's a change from him going down to a certain period of time. Like for example, this I think the chain goes through all the way down to our previous time. There's a chain transmission, and then there are key important manuscripts. So here he gives examples of these different manuscripts. He talks about them, different manuscripts, and you can talk about where they are and where they're found. And these manuscripts will go back maybe 500 years, maybe 800 years, uh, usually that kind of time there. And then he gives a chain transmission, etc. For the work and the whole chain. And we mentioned, we wanted to mention that there's a certain time in history, if you look at the chain of this book anyway, there's a certain time in history where this book is basically solely narrated in Spain, right? So here, if you look at some of these names, okay, so like this is Tarablos, but like Bashkwal, this is Spain. Toledo, that's Spain. Talam here as well. I think these are Spanish as well. So like it's like here, 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 like somewhere in this stage in its narration, in approximately the 400s, it only goes through Spain. So what does that tell us? It tells us the Spanish were super scholars and they basically carried the Ummah. Because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have the book, like many other books. Okay? And so from them, right, here you see names like when you see names like here, I can zoom in, I can't zoom in. Yeah, here we go. So Toledo is in Spain. It's also America now, right? Here when you say an name like Bashkwal, that's it, right? Al-Qabisi, that sounds very Spanish. He's Spanish, that's for sure. Abu Tahir As-Silafi is not Spanish, but this is Spanish. I think these two are Spanish as well. You're going to see some Lakhmis as well. I don't know where the Lakhmi is. Other chains. So I think here it's Spanish. Here it is not Spanish. It could be Allahu Alam. So it starts off, so basically it goes through Spain. At one point, basically it's all going through Spain. Right? So the fact that it goes through Spain, what does it mean? It means they were super scholars and they, right? When you take over a discussion, if you can imagine there's like a meeting in the office, right? There's a meeting in the office and then there's like, imagine for example, we're talking about something in the office and there's these two new guys who used to work for some other company, and they just take over the whole discussion. Like the discussion is only between them, and everybody else is kind of left out. That means they are more expertise, they're more interested, they're more powerful, they have more care for this issue. So that's what happens when a certain people or groups of people they care about something, they take over that world, right? Like Japan with cars, right? It's like, whoa, how is there so many cars just from Japan? It's insane, right? Versus from compared to other places, right? Food from Central Asia or food from the Mediterranean versus other places, like it's not the same, right? Um, so certain things, so that means they've adopted something that they really care about, and here it's deen, one specific hadith, right? And then eventually that dwindles out, the fall of Spain, etc., and it becomes insignificant. Central Asia is very important. Imam al-Dhahabi tells us that. He tells us like, Central Asia was very important until the Mongols. Thereafter, nothing really happened. Okay, so that was a kind of a side point. Okay, so it says Babu Fard al-Wudu. قال الله تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة. الآية دليل على أن هذا على بعض القائمين دون بعض. Right? When you get up to pray, not when you get up. Right? So it says there's a proof that it is some people who get up to pray, to get up, not just anybody. Not إذا قمتم, but إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة. Right? So therefore it's not just any. So what's he referring to? He's talking about the reason. He's talking about al-am and khas. These are all ideas that he's getting from the stage he is in history. He's not just reading hadith like that. He is in this loose kind of Shafi'i world, right? And he's thinking like Imam Shafi'i, khas and am, etc. Right? That's what he's doing. So he says, ما حدثناه عبد الله بن هاشم قال حدثنا يحيى يعني ابن سعيد. Ha means I have another chain. So just like we can find this hadith with another chain of transmission somewhere else, he's doing the same thing. So he said, I have heard this hadith in one place and I've heard this hadith in another place. Right? So he says, I have a chain transmission that goes to Yahya ibn Sa'id. Yeah. Yahya ibn Sa'id. Yes. Yahya ibn Sa'id. Then he says, حدثنا إسحاق بن Mansur. So I have two people that I studied this hadith with. He studied it with Yahya ibn Sa'id. This is Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan. It's possible. It would make sense. Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan. That's what it sounds like here. حدثنا عبد الرحمن ibn Mahdi. And then he says, جميعا, both of them, from Sufyan al-Thawri. How do I know it's Sufyan al-Thawri? Because this is Alqama, who is a Kufan, Sufyan Kufan. Okay? So Sufyan al-Thawri. So he has two chains going back to Sufyan al-Thawri. So this is how we can do time travel. Okay, we can do time travel. Time travel is we compare the different chains throughout the Muslim world, and we can skip the details. Like I don't need to know who Abdullah ibn Hashim is because I know that he narrated from him and he narrated from him. And if they're both narrating from Sufyan, then I know that Sufyan said these words because you just backed him up. So now I have an event or a series of events happening in the past, and I can actually fast forward or reverse back to that time by comparing corroborating evidence. So now I'm there because I have this chain goes to that point. That chain, that means that happened. I don't need to deal with the specifics, how strong or weak everybody else is at the bottom, because I know it happened. Now I'm dealing with Sufyan. Who is Sufyan? Can I trust him? Did he really study with the person above him, etc. Right? And I believe here, so here, his chains converge. This is what's called the madar of the hadith. So the madar of the hadith for that he has here is Sufyan al-Thawri. In reality, other people narrate it. So we had previously gone through this collection, and Al-Qama ibn Marthad actually is the madar of, if you find other chains in the six books, you will find that you will find that it actually goes through him. So the chain that's relevant to us, right, to research and to question is Al-Qama from Sulaiman ibn Buraidah from Buraidah, the Sahabi. Right? That's what's interesting. So suddenly I'm now in the 1st century Hijri because I have all this corroborating evidence, right? And I believe I went through this. No, I didn't. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so Al-Qama of the circle. This is Al-Qama. He's like one of the circles of the pre-Hanafis, right? The Kufan scholars that made the Hanafi school, the students of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. This is Al-Qama ibn Marthad, right? And the great scholars there. Fuqaha of Kufa, Kufan scholars. From Sulaiman ibn Buraidah, from Buraidah the Sahabi, قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يتوضأ عند كل صلاة. Right? So he used to do it every single time. When you get up to pray, right? So in every single prayer. فلما كان يوم الفتح توضأ ومسح على خفيه فصلى الصلوات بوضوء واحد. Right? فقال عمر يا رسول الله إنك فعلت شيئا لم تكن تفعله قال إني عمدا فعلته يا عمر. Right? I intentionally did that to show you that you can make wudu. You can make wudu with one. You don't have to make wudu every single time you pray because perhaps if you didn't break your wudu, then you don't have to do that. Al hadith li ishaq. What does that mean? So yes, I have two chains for it, but the wording that I chose to use here are Ishaq's wording, Ishaq ibn Mansur. Right, the actual wording. So therefore, there's a difference in wording. وَلَمْ يَذْكُرْ ابْنُ هاشم وَمَسَحَ عَلَى خُفَيْهِ. So there's actually a difference. In this version that goes through here to Sufyan, there's actually a difference. It doesn't mention وَمَسَحَ عَلى خُفَيْهِ. Right? By the way, and that can be relevant, cannot be relevant. Okay, then it mentions here this hadith. Mentions the different sources here. So this is Tuhfat al-Ashraf. It's found in Mim for Muslim, Dal for Abu Dawood, Ta for Tirmidhi, Sin for Nasa'i, Qaf for Qazwini. Okay, and this is the number as well. This is Tuhfat al-Ashraf while Hafiz busy. I.e., this hadith is found everywhere else. Right? So I can go back to Tuhfat al-Ashraf, find the madar of the hadith, find the different chains from a Muslim, Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, and Ibn Majah, right? And I can check, is this hadith reliable or not? And find out where the madar is, right? And you find it all revolves around there's somebody else, perhaps Shu'bah ibn Hajjaj as well narrates this hadith from Alqamah. So therefore I know that the chain starts, the madar of the hadith is here. Okay? The point of convergence, right? All your sources go back to Alqamah. It's now dependent on the reliability of Alqamah and then the reliability of Sulaiman and the reliability of this, right? And then the differences and the errors can be checked through the different versions of the hadith. Okay? Make sense? Ammar, Asim, Muhammad. Okay. So he goes hadith number 2. He says, باب الوضوء من الريح حدثنا محمد بن يحيى وإبراهيم بن مرزوق قال. So here he said, so and so told me that so and so said. And then so and so said that somebody else said. So these were two separate, he has these two different things with a ha of tahwil, right? Like new chain. So I'm hearing this and then it stops and then it comes back and then they converge with Sufyan ibn Athawri. Here, he's saying two people told me that they both said that Wahab and Jarir said. Okay? So that's different. I'm saying one sheikh, I said with one sheikh, he said that the two shuyukh that I have for this hadith, they're both converging at the same teacher, right? But it's at the same grand teacher, right? Same grand teacher. So I'm going to put two different chains. Okay, so here's these two people said, okay, حدثنا وهب بن جرير, and then حدثنا شعبة. I put a little red circle around شعبة because if again you look at other chains for the hadith, so here it says two, it's in ta for Tirmidhi, qaf for Qazwini, i.e. Ibn Majah from Qazwin. Okay, so you go back and you will find other chains for it, and the hadith actually all converge around Shu'bah. His chains for them converge around Wahb ibn Jarir. Okay, so this is Shu'bah ibn Hajjaj, the great hadith scholar, huge giant. Okay, so he says Shu'bah and Suhail ibn Abi Salih and Abihi and Abi Huraira. This chain is okay. It's not amazing. Okay, this chain is not amazing. And then the Nabi, but it's good, right? I wouldn't say okay. I would say it's good, right? So Suhail ibn Abi Salih, writing from his father, from his grandfather, is good, right? Notice it's not in Bukhari and Muslim. And the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam قال لا وضوء إلا من صوت أو ريح, right? There is no wudu unless you smell something or so hear something or smell something. Okay, well, what if you have yaqeen? Right? Well, if you have yaqeen, what if you're certain? Then you're certain, right? That's good enough, right? So the point is that's good enough. So the point is you smell something, you hear something, or you're certain the feet sensation was obvious, then you're going to have to make wudu. He says حدثنا علي بن خشرم أخبرنا ابن عيينة. So this is the other Sufyan. So when we say Sufyan, we have Sufyan al-Thawri and we have Sufyan ibn Uyayna. Okay, one of the teachers. He's like the Imam Malik, and the kind of second Imam Malik of the Hijaz, right? So he like Imam Malik will narrate from az-Zuhri. He like Imam Malik is the teacher of Imam Shafi'i, right? And the Musnad al-Humaydi that we spoke about last week is basically the Musnad of Ibn Uyayna. So a key powerhouse for hadith, just like Shu'bah is a key powerhouse as well, right? So it says عن الزهري عن سعيد بن مسيب. So Zuhri, super giant, super hadith scholar, really, really good. A good like third of the seerah comes from him, right? He's like the source for it, right? So if you look at the seerah of Ibn Hisham, the seerah of Ma'mar ibn Rashid, the seerah of Musa ibn Uqba, okay? You flick through it and you keep seeing Ibn Shihab said, Az-Zuhri said, and you're like, oh my God, this guy comes up again and again and again. What does that mean? It means that, and then it will stop with him. So here it says the chain goes up with mentioning his sources, but a lot of the seerah is just Zuhri saying, we have heard the scholars say, or this happened, or these people died. Okay, so he's very, very important. He's a huge faqih. He's a huge hadith scholar. He comes up, fills the 6 books all the time, giant, super reliable, and and he's a key kind of author of a lot of the seerah. عن سعيد Musayyab, the great mufti of Medina, son-in-law of Abu Hurairah, and hadith scholar. عن عباد بن تميم عن عمه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا وجد أحدكم في الصلاة شيئا, you sense something in prayer, فلا ينصرف حتى يجد ريحا أو يسمع صوتا, right, until he smells a smell or hears a sound, right, until you are certain. And this hadith again is found in Bukhari. It's found in, so Bukhari might narrate from somebody else, right? Bukhari is not going to narrate from Ibn Uyayna, but Bukhari will narrate from somebody else from Ibn Uyayna. Maybe Humaydi, right? Maybe he'll narrate from somebody else. Maybe he'll narrate from somebody else to Zuhri, right? Allahu A'lam. Here I put a little thing around Ibn Uyayna, so perhaps it's not narrated by Malik, right? And it's not narrated by other people who study with Zuhri, right? So what you'll find is the author of 6 books, their shuyukh here will be different. And they might have more than one shuyukh at that level. So what they're doing is they're traveling around the Muslim world. They're hearing the same hadith from one sheikh, that Sufyan Ibn Uyayna said that Zuhri said. The other one. Khalas. So they might give you one source, they might give you many sources. But the point is they're familiar from different shuyukh of this hadith. Does that make sense? And so they even might refer to it. They say the hadith of Ibn Uyayna from Zuhri, from Sa'id ibn Musayyab about this. Because they're not going to bother mentioning the source for it, right? Because they've heard it from so many sources. As opposed to a hadith that they've only heard from one source, that is problematic, right? It's not going to be that they only have one sheikh that hears this. Does that make sense? So what I'm trying to say is when the author of the 6 books are writing hadith, that is not the only source they have for that hadith, and those hadith are not new to the people who are reading their book. So it's not that I'm mentioning a hadith that only I know, right? And if that is the case, as Tirmidhi will frequently point out, or Al-Bazzar in the Muslim Bazzar, he'll say this hadith, or Al-Tabarani, whose generation afterwards, right? Tabarani will say, this hadith is only narrated from so-and-so, and from him only so-and-so. I.e., that's a problem, that's fishy, that's odd, that's weird, right? Like, in Shafi fiqh, it is halal to eat pork if you're in the West. I heard Sheikh Farid say that on his WhatsApp group. And like, are you sure? That's really strict. Like, I've never heard of any Shafi ever say that. That's really weird. Yeah, that's the Mu'tamad. It's like, okay. And then Farid keeps saying random stuff like that. And you're like, Farid's weird. I'm sorry. Like, every single time he says Shafi and I don't hear any other Shafi say it, it's just odd, right? It's just like weird. So that's like when it comes to gharib, right? Whereas the further you go up, if you go to like Zuhri might have a hadith that no one else has. Sa'id ibn Musayyib might have a hadith that nobody else has. A Sahabi will have a hadith that nobody else has. It happens, right? But by the year 200 approximately, no, that's not going to happen. There aren't hadiths that only you know and nobody else knows. It's not like that. Okay. So the same point here, basically. So this is the qaida in fiqh, al-yaqeen la yazulu bil-shak, right? Certainty shall not be lifted for doubt. And you are certain you made wudu, you're now doubting, did you break wudu? Unless you are certain, you ignore those things. Okay, bab al-wudu min al-gha'iti wal-bawl wal-nawm. Right, so this chapter, where is this coming from? Did he read the hadith and extrapolate it? No. He studied fiqh and he's looking at hadith through the eyes of fuqaha, right? They might debate some issues, they might not debate issues, but there is a pre-existing analysis of what's going on. Okay, a pre-existing analysis of what's going on. Imam Bukhari looks at a hadith and gives it a title. Where did that title come from? Where did that discussion come from? From his fiqh studies. In fiqh, they have these considerations and those considerations. So we have to understand that these people who are writing the 6 books, they are already indoctrinated or trained, however you want to label it, right? So like a modernist would a modernist would say, look, these people are, or there's already, they're already kind of like, they're not looking at it a new way. They're already looking at it in the way that the first and second century scholars looked at the deen, right? So their fiqh is already there, and they're just kind of like organizing it, if that makes sense. Can you speak about the point that Usuliyin make about Mursal al-Hadith of Sa'id Musayyib being a hujjah? So basically, for Imam al-Shafi'i and certain hadith scholars like Ibn Abi Hatim, a Mursal hadith is a hadith where there's a gap in the chain, right? So, for example, you're reading the Seerah and it says Zuhri said that this happened. Like you weren't there. Zuhri is born in the year 50. So you were definitely not at the Battle of Badr. How do you know what happened there? So there's a gap in the chain. What is the gap in the chain? Zuhri is either quoting Sayyidina Anas or some other Sahabi, or he's quoting somebody else. If he's quoting a Sahabi, that's great. But if he's quoting somebody else who is not a Sahabi, how can I trust the hadith? And maybe that Sahabi, that student teacher of yours, is narrating from somebody else again. Right? Notice this chain. Zuhri narrates from Sa'id. Sa'id narrates from Abbad. Abbad narrates from his uncle. Okay, so that means if Zuhri just said the Prophet ﷺ said, that means there's like 2 to 3 people gap in the chain. I can't trust it, right? So in principle, the Mursal Hadith does not have enough information for you to be confident about it, right? And the scholars will say that about Zuhri. Zuhri is fantastic if he gives you your sources. If he does not give you your sources, then don't trust him, because he's only not mentioning the sources because they're not reliable, right? And other people might do the opposite. They might not mention the sources because they are reliable. Anyway, so basically with Sa'id al-Musayyib, there's this quote from Imam Shafi'i that for Sa'id al-Musayyib is different. Sa'id al-Musayyib is a huge faqih. His father-in-law is Abu Huraira, and we've looked at his marasil. When it says Sa'id al-Musayyib that the Prophet said, we trust him, right? But that's because they've been found to be actually connected. You will find, for example, in the Muwatta, here's a hadith that says so and so and so and so and so and so that Sa'id al-Musayyib said that the Prophet said. You'll find that hadith somewhere else where Sa'id al-Musayyib is actually quoting a Sahabi, right? And so that's because they found it. But for more details on the Mursal, you need to look in the Marasil of Sunan Abi Dawood with the Tahqiq of Sheikh Shu'aib Arnaout, right? So if you're not going to get it now or you don't have time to read it now, just write it down. Say C uh, C Marasil Sunan Abi Dawood Tahqiq Sheikh Shu'aib Arnaout, right? Because in the beginning of it, he talks about the Mursal Hadith, and you get a different kind of picture, the different types of what the different scholars had. Hafidh al-Ala'i, Ibn Hatim, Ibn Abi Hatim al-Razi, Abu Dawood, Imam Ahmad, different kind of pictures, and then different types of hadiths as well, different types of Mursal Hadith. It's a bit more, it's a bit more nuanced than being accepted or not accepted. Wallahu a'lam. Okay. Next hadith, she says باب الوضوء من الغائط والبول والنوم. حدثنا محمد بن عبد الله بن يزيد قال أخبرنا سفيان عن عاصم. Right, this is Asim ibn Abi Najud. Right, this is قراءة Asim, Hafs and Asim. Right, when we recite Hafs and Asim, right, and Shu'ba and Asim. Right, so Shu'ba, his name is Abu Bakr ibn Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash. Right, that's his name. His code name in the Quran world is his kunya or his laqab is Shu'ba. That's Shu'ba and Asim and Hafs and Asim. Right? So this is Asim ibn Abi Najud. He's okay. Right? He's not that amazing in Quran. In Quran, of course, he's amazing, but in Hadith, he's okay. صدوق له أوهام, he's good, he has some mistakes here and there. عن زر ibn حبيش. So our قراءة goes to عاصم. One طريق from him is to زر ibn حبيش, right? One of the great qurra of the Salaf. Right? Maybe somebody on the group could put the whole thing, Hafs and Asim, and you can see the different, how it spreads above and below. So this is Zir ibn Hubaysh. Okay. قال أتيت صفوان بن عسال المرادية رضي الله عنه فقال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يأمرنا إذا كنا سفرا أي مسافرين. Right? فعل can be the plural of فاعل. مسافر سفر. راكب ركب, a group of riders. شارب شرب. صاحب صحب. Can't think of other words, but فعل سفر can sometimes be the plural of فاعل. ألا ننزع خفافنا 3 أيام ولياليهن إلا من جنابة ولا ننزع من غائط ولا بول ولا نوم. So he told us, right, that if you wear khufs, you can wipe for 3 days. But if you go into if you have to go into janaba, you're going to have to take them off. But you don't take them off for other causes of wudu. What are those other causes of wudu? Oh, like going to the bathroom. Al-gha'it wala nawm. Okay, going to the bathroom. Or sleeping. So therefore sleeping breaks wudu. Therefore going to the bathroom breaks the wudu. Therefore, right? So what does it not mention though? So he used to tell us that we had to take our khufs off because of janaba, but we didn't have to take our khufs off for other causes of wudu, such as going to the bathroom or sleeping. It doesn't mention touching the opposite sex. It doesn't mention what else? Mas, touching private parts. It doesn't mention eating. It doesn't mention eating camel meat. It doesn't mention laughing in prayer. Right? Other issues that are debated in fiqh. So the zahir, the outward purport of this hadith, is you only have to make wudu from these things: going to the bathroom and sleeping. Okay, going to the bathroom and sleeping. And so if you look at some other things, eating camel meat, is that debated? Whether it breaks your wudu or not? Yes, it is, right? Laughing in prayer? Yes, it is. Touching your private parts. Is it debated? Yes, we're going to see in a second. What else? Touching the opposite sex, is it debated? Yes, right? So if you look at things that are agreed upon, the issues that are agreed upon are basically najasa coming out of your private parts and sleep. That's what's agreed upon, right? And even sleep, there's debate on what kind of sleep, right? Wallahu alam. Okay, look, it says باب الوضوء من المذي. It says حدثنا محمد بن يحيى قال حدثنا عثمان بن عمر قال أخبرنا مالك. So notice the whole world is going to be traveling, right? In the end of the second, in the second century, the whole world is going to be traveling to Medina to study with Imam Malik. So therefore, there will be, wherever you go, there will be somebody who studied from Imam Malik, right? So this will be the hadith of Imam Malik, right? And chances are, because it's from Imam Malik, which book will you find it in? If it's from Imam Malik, which book will you find it in? The Muwatta of Imam Malik. So what will happen is there will be people writing their own books, like Ibn Jarud, right? He has his own compilation, his own selection, where he studied with people who studied with people who studied with Imam Malik, or he studied with people who studied with Imam Malik. There'll be one or two people between him and Imam Malik, okay? And he'll be putting it in his own book, or he'll have his own narration of the Muwatta. And every single narration of the Muwatta will be so and so from Malik, right? That's what it'll be. But it will be in the way that Imam Malik organized it. Does that make sense? So you may have so and so from Imam Malik for your own organization of a hadith, or you may have the Muwatta of Imam Malik as narrated by so and so from so and so. Excuse me, right? So, for example, today when he's talking about the Muwatta of Imam Malik, what do you mean? Is you mean the narration that Ubaidullah ibn Yahya al-Laythi narrates from his father, Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi, narrates from Imam Malik. So basically in Spain, Ubaidullah ibn Yahya al-Laythi narrates, and it's spread in Spain like that. And so your chain will go back to Ubaidullah ibn Yahya al-Laythi to Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi to Imam Malik, right? And there's another version, the Muwatta of al-Qa'nabi, right? The Muwatta of Isa Yahya of Ma'na ibn Isa al-Qazzaz, the Muwatta of Qutayba ibn Sa'id. But everybody's narrating the Muwatta. Everybody is going to Medina to narrate that book. So then they will get those hadiths and put it into their own collection, and you'll find that same hadith in the other books here and there, and you'll find it in the Muwatta itself. Does that make sense? Everyone's following me? But the problem is the way that we think is it's in that book. So what does it mean it's in that book? The book was not written in front of you, right? So we think, oh, but it's in, you say, where did you read that word? Oh, I read it in Gulliver's Travels. Okay, well, how did Gulliver's Travels reach you? Oh, I don't know. I never really thought about that, right? We don't think, we say, for example, Imam Nawawi mentioned in the Majmu'. Okay, well, how did that book reach you, right? Oh, I didn't think about that. Like, you just think about a book as if it's an abstract thing. In their world, it's not like that. In their world, it's not like that. Because their world, things are still short, few in number enough that you can't say, oh, it's in that book. But it's going to be in that book as narrated to me from so and so, from so and so, from so and so. That's how it is. Everything is so and so, from so and so, from so and so. You have to have a source. Otherwise, it's not reliable. Right? Does that make sense? Okay, so he says حدثنا محمد بن يحيى قال حدثنا عثمان بن عمر قال أخبرنا مالك بن أنس عن سالم أبي النضر عن سليمان بن يسار right تابعي فقيه مدينة عن المقداد بن الأسود مقداد صحابي رضي الله عنه قال سألت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن الرجل يدنو من أهله. He gets close. Min. So min sometimes means in relationship to. So often we use it with time, with space. So dana yadnu is to be like get close to something. Dana minhu, qariban minhu, right? But it means like in respect to that person. So I say ma qarabataka minhu, like how are you related to him, right? In relationship to him. I say ma mawqifuka min kada. What's your stance on this, i.e. in respect to it, right? Aina anta min kada. How far are you away from this? Right? Aina kada min kada. How far is this from this? Like in relationship to what it is, right? لمنزلته عنده or لمنزلته منه, right? Because of his rank in that person's eyes, or because of his rank with that person, right? That's what min means. Right? It doesn't mean like from, right? Here means like gets close to, but in relationship to his wife. He gets close to his wife. فيمضي, and so pre-ejaculate comes out of him. فقال إذا وجد أحدكم شيئا من ذلك فلينضح فرجه. قال يعني يغسله ويتوضأ. Right, so the point is that's najasa coming out of your private parts, like madhi, it breaks wudu and it's also najas, so therefore you have to wash it. And he says, حدثنا محمد بن هشام المروذي ببغداد, right? Marwaruthi, this is in Central Asia, right? حدثنا أبو بكر يعني ابن عياش. Who can remember who this was? Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash. We mentioned Hafs and Asim and Shu'bah, right? This is Shu'bah. Okay, so this is Shu'bah, and this is the Shu'bah who is our one of the rawis of Asim, right? So Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash and Asim ibn Abi Najud, right? عن أبي حصين عن أبي عبد الرحمن السلمي. Okay, that's the same Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami who is one in our Sanad for the Quran, Abu Abdul key Qari, student of Sayyidina Ali. All right, this is the same one. Right, if you look at your tariqah, uh, uh, yes, he's a powerhouse for Sirah. Yeah, key source for a lot of Sirah without a chain transmission. So if somebody could look on the Mus'haf, right? If you look at the back of the Mus'haf, where is the Mus'haf? 1 second. So it says here, my Mus'haf from Medina is Hafs. حفص ابن سليمان ابن مغيرة الأسدي الكوفي لقراءة عاصم ابن نجود الكوفي. We just saw him 2 minutes ago, right? التابعي عن عبد الرحمن ابن عبد الله ابن حبيب السلمي. This is this man here, right? And so who did عبد الرحمن السلمي, who did he recite with? عن عثمان وعلي وزيد بن ثابت وأبي بن كعب. Okay? So Abd al-Rahman al-Sulami, he studied with 4 of the Sahaba. Right? And there's other, but there's more to it. It doesn't give the whole chain here in reality. So in reality, there's more. Because if you look at the tariqah, it's a little bit broader than that, because it's also merged into the tariqah that this what's it called? This qira'ah is also the qira'ah, and Hafs is also qira'ah of Abdullah Mas'ud. So if you look in other versions, you'll see more details there. It's not as simple as that. So anyway, this is Abu Bakr, the other version of that chain. So this is Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash from Asim ibn Najud, from Abdurrahman al-Sulami, from Zir, we also mentioned Zir ibn Hubaysh and others as well. So I believe, where was Zir? Zir ibn Hubaysh. Zir ibn Hubaysh from, so Asim also narrated from Zir ibn Hubaysh from Abdullah Mas'ud, right? So he studied with, his sanad goes to like 5 of the Sahaba. Correct me if I'm wrong. قال كنت رجلا مذاء فاستحييت أن أسأل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لأن ابنته كانت تحتي فأمرت رجلا فسأله فقال منه الوضوء. Right, so the same hadith basically. So the reason what happened here is that this person here, Miqdad, is the person that Sayyidina Ali asked to ask. So Sayyidina Ali asks Miqdad, I'm married to the Prophet's wife. It's a bit awkward to ask a kind of question like, what happens if you have pre-ejaculate coming out of you? لأن ابنته كانت تحتي. It's not nice, right? So you shouldn't be, it's not like, oh, embarrassing, that kind of thing happens, but that doesn't mean you should be so overt, right? It's not that nice. فأمرت رجلا, I told him, i.e. Miqdad, and he went and asked, فقال منه الوضوء, you have to make wudu because of it, right? كانت تحتي, she was my wife. So what does that tell us about gender roles? كانت تحتي. What does it tell us about gender roles? Exactly. الرجال قوامون على النساء. You're in charge. She's beneath you. There is a hierarchy. You're not on the same level, right? It doesn't mean, yeah, keep her beneath your feet. Make sure you control her. If she don't let her talk. It doesn't mean that, right? The Prophet was not like that. Uh, but there is a hierarchy, right? There is a hierarchy. Okay, let's finish this chapter. He says, حدثنا بحر بن نصر قال حدثنا ابن وهب. This is the student of Imam Malik, right? Egyptian student of Imam Malik, Ibn Wahab. قال حدثني معاوية بن صالح عن العلاء بن حارث عن حرام بن حكيم عن عمه عبد الله بن سعد قال سألت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال وأما الماء بعد الماء فهو المذي وكل فحل يمذي فتغسل من ذلك فرجك وأنثييك وتوضع وضوءك للصلاة. Right? So it says, as for the water after the water, right? I.e., something that might come out afterwards and another time other than actual ejaculate, then it is called madhi. And every male has pre-ejaculate. It's a normal thing. So he should wash his private parts along with his testicles. وَتَوَضَّأْ وُضُوءَكَ لِلصَّلَاةِ, and make wudu as you do for prayer. So here, this is the position of, I believe that Hanabila is that you have to wash the whole. So it's not an issue of washing the area that has najasa on it. Rather, wash the area, the whole male member, whether there's najasa on it or not, and wash all the testicles, whether there's najasa on them or not. Right? It's like a mini ghusl. Right? The Shafis, we say, i.e., wash your private parts because of the najasa. So if there's no najasa on them, then you don't have to wash it. Right? Wash your testicles because there might be najasa on them. If there's no najasa, then you don't have to wash them. Right? Inshallah, we'll come back to the next thing, inshallah, next week, inshallah ta'ala. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.